We were just looking for somewhere cheap and close to the beach. That was it. Leah found the listing online, the Shorepine Inn. It wasn't part of any major chain, and the photos looked dated, but the price was unbeatable. We were 4 college friends trying to squeeze one last summer together before real life pulled us apart. Me, Leah, Brian, and Marcus. The drive was long, but the coast was beautiful, the kind of jagged shoreline that looks cinematic at sunset. The hotel stood about 3 blocks from the beach, a squat, gray building surrounded by rusted iron railings and weeds poking through cracked asphalt. The sign buzzed faintly in the afternoon heat. Shorepine Inn, vacancy. I remember saying it looked like something out of a horror movie. Leah laughed. It's vintage. Brian rolled his eyes. It's tetanus. The inside wasn't much better. The lobby smelled like mildew and artificial lemon cleaner. The man at the front desk barely looked up when we walked in, just slid us a key and said, room 306, top floor, end of the hall. No elevator, just a creaking stairwell that reeked of dust and heat. When we opened the door to 306, the air hit us like a wall, dry, stale, suffocating. The heater was on full blast. August heat outside, and this room felt like a furnace. Marcus fiddled with the thermostat, twisting the dial back to cool. Nothing happened. Leah tried the windows, but they wouldn't budge. Nailed shut. We thought maybe it was just broken. Old building, bad wiring. It didn't matter. We were young, excited, and had a beach waiting for us. The first night was hot. Miserable, even with the fan we borrowed from the front desk. We lay on top of the sheets, sweating, barely sleeping. The air felt thick, like it didn't want to move. I woke around 3 a.m. to the sound of Brian coughing. I sat up, disoriented. The room was sweltering. The heater hummed from the wall, louder than before. I stumbled over to it, tried to turn it off completely, but the dial spun uselessly in my hand. Leah muttered something behind me, her voice dry and scratchy. We opened the door to the hallway for relief, but it wouldn't budge. The knob turned, but the frame wouldn't give. Locked. Panic flickered. Marcus tried the bathroom window. Sealed. He grabbed a chair and slammed it against the glass. It bounced back with a hollow thud. We were trapped. It got hotter. I started feeling dizzy, my skin slick with sweat. Brian was slumped on the floor, panting, red-faced. Leah had stripped down to her tank top and shorts, lying flat on the tiles in the bathroom. Marcus pounded on the walls, screaming for help. His voice sounded far away. My phone had no signal, no Wi-Fi. That night blurred into a haze. I remember pressing my face to the floor, trying to breathe the cooler air near the cracks. The walls seemed to ripple, like the heat was alive and moving. At some point, the door just opened. The front desk clerk was standing there, blinking like he didn't know why he was holding the master key. He looked around the room, lips parting in slow horror. Leah was unconscious. Brian was barely breathing. Marcus had stopped yelling. They rushed us to the hospital. Dehydration. Heat exhaustion. They said we were lucky. The hotel offered refunds, apologies, blamed faulty wiring. We didn't buy it, especially after what happened a month later. Another group, 2 couples on vacation from Portland, checked into the same room. Room 306. They didn't check out. Housekeeping found them 2 days later, dead. All 4 of them. No signs of violence, no drugs, just heat. The room had been sealed tight, thermostat broken, windows stuck, doors locked from the inside. The police opened an investigation. Health inspectors, fire marshals. Nothing made sense. That's when someone found the lawsuit. A previous tenant from 5 years earlier had sued the hotel after her husband died in room 306. She survived barely, but he hadn't. Same story. Blistering heat. Locked doors. She claimed the room was cursed, that something in the walls fed on heat. Fed on them. Her case was dismissed. Lacked evidence. Now, with new deaths, the media latched on. A string of mysterious heat-related incidents all tied to the same room. The Shorepine Inn was shut down within weeks. Condemned. I still dream about that room. Sometimes I see the walls breathing. Sometimes the thermostat ticks louder and louder until it drowns out everything. Sometimes I wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, certain that I'm still in room 306, that I never really left. It was supposed to be the perfect summer. Our group had been planning the trip for months. Me, my girlfriend Leah, our friends Tyler, Marcy, and Darnell. We booked a cabin near the coast of a small beach town none of us had ever heard of before. secluded, cheap, and just remote enough to feel like a real escape. The kind of place you find on a map with a name that sounds made up. Hollow Shore. We arrived on a Sunday afternoon, the sky clear and the ocean glittering in the sun. The beach was almost empty except for a few locals scattered across the sand. The water stretched out like glass, blue and calm, a stark contrast to the jagged rocks that flanked the cove like crooked teeth. Everything felt untouched, pristine. Too pristine, maybe. The locals didn't talk much. The cashier at the gas station looked like she wanted to warn us about something, but never said a word. Just stared at us a little too long, especially when we mentioned the beach. We laughed it off. Tourists, right? The first few days were what you'd expect. Barbecues, music, late-night swims. Tyler brought his Bluetooth speaker and blasted his playlist like the beach was his own private concert. We drank cheap beer, dared each other to jump off the rocks into the deep water, played chicken fights in the waves. On the fourth day, the water changed. It started out like any other morning. Any other morning. The sun was high, the sand hot beneath our feet. Leah and Marcy were sunbathing while the rest of us splashed around. Tyler had the bright idea to swim further out toward the edge of the cove where the rocks curled around like a half-closed fist. "Bet you won't make it to the rock wall," he said, grinning. Darnell laughed. "Watch me." He was always the strongest swimmer. Lean, fast. We watched him cut through the water, arms slicing the surface as he pulled away from us. He was almost to the shadowy edge when he stopped. Just stopped. "Darnell?" I called. "You good?" He didn't answer, just floated there treading water. Then he was gone. No splash, no thrashing, no sound. 1 second he was there, the next, nothing. We all froze. Then the water erupted, not with him, but with color. A massive plume of red spread out from where he'd been. The water turned crimson in an instant, and I swear I saw something move beneath it. Not a shark, not a fish. Something wrong. Something big. Leah screamed. Marcy dropped her phone into the sand. I dove in before I could think, swimming hard toward the red bloom in the water. But there was nothing. No sign of Darnell, no bubbles, no body. Just that awful stain, like the sea itself had started to bleed. We called the police, park rangers, the Coast Guard. They searched for 2 days. Drones, divers, boats dragging sonar equipment. Nothing, not even a shred of clothing. They questioned us like we were lying, like we'd made it all up. But how do you fake something like that? How do you fabricate that moment, watching someone you know vanish in broad daylight? The beach was shut down the next morning. They put up yellow tape and warning signs. No swimming, dangerous currents. Like that was all it was, but it wasn't. We stayed in the cabin, stunned, numb. The silence between us grew heavier by the hour. Leah cried every night. Tyler didn't talk at all, just sat on the porch, chain smoking. The worst part was, I kept hearing the ocean at night, that soft, rhythmic sound of waves rolling in, and sometimes in between the crashing surf, I thought I heard something else, like a wet, dragging sound, like something pulling itself across sand. On our last night, I couldn't sleep. I stepped outside, needing air. The wind had picked up, and clouds blanketed the sky. I walked toward the beach, even though the signs warned against it. The tape had been torn down. The path through the dunes felt colder than before. The moon broke through the clouds in pieces, casting flickering light on the waves. And then I saw it. A shape, far out in the water, just at the edge of visibility. It was floating. I thought, it's him. Darnell. I stumbled down the slope, heart hammering, calling his name. The figure drifted closer, almost lazily, as if it heard me. But when the next wave hit, it vanished again, just like before. And then I heard something behind me. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the wind and the grass. But I knew I wasn't alone. I turned back to the ocean, and the shape was closer. Too close, and it wasn't floating. It was rising, emerging from the water. Not a person. Not anything human. It was tall, thin, like stretched skin draped over bone. Its limbs bent wrong, fingers long and tipped in something sharp. Its face, if you could call it that, was smooth and glistening, and featureless except for a mouth that opened far too wide, showing teeth that didn't belong in any creature born of this world. It took a step onto the beach. I ran. I don't remember getting back to the cabin. I don't remember bursting through the door, screaming, waking everyone up. I just remember Leah's face when she saw me, pale, confused, terrified. We left before sunrise. Didn't even pack. just threw what we had into the car and drove. We didn't speak for hours. Darnell was never found. The beach stayed closed. The town tried to move on. But I still have nightmares about the water, about what lives beneath it, and about the fact that when I ran back to the cabin that night, when I turned my back to flee, I thought I heard a voice rise above the surf. A voice that sounded like Darnell, screaming my name. It was supposed to be a simple summer trip. I remember the heat best. Not the kind of warmth you welcome after a long winter, but the thick, pressing kind that makes your skin crawl even in the shade. My wife and I had taken our 2 kids, Jamie 10 and Lucy 8, to Kettleshore, a quiet, out-of-the-way beach town tucked into the crook of a rocky coastline. The kind of place with chipped paint on the shops and old fishermen who still wore their hats inside. The locals said the beach was untouched, natural, hidden. We thought that meant charming. It was a Tuesday when it happened. The beach was unusually crowded for a weekday. Families, tourists, groups of kids dragging plastic buckets and inflatable animals. The sky was overcast and the tide was lower than usual. I remember Jamie and Lucy running ahead of us with their little boogie boards, laughing and kicking up sand as they made for the waterline. My wife spread out the towels and I set up the umbrella, pretending not to notice how stiff the wind had gotten. Then we heard the scream. Not the kind of startled yelp kids make when they get splashed. This one was sharp, high, and full of panic. I turned in time to see Jamie waving his arms, soaked up to his knees, yelling something I couldn't hear. Lucy was only a few feet away from him, standing still, too still. And then, in a blink, she dropped. Not like she tripped. Not like she slipped. She dropped. Straight down, swallowed by the earth like a puppet pulled through a trapdoor. My legs didn't move fast enough. I sprinted, my feet heavy in the sand, as Jamie screamed her name over and over. The spot where she disappeared looked like a shallow pit, and Jamie, against all reason, ran straight into it. I screamed for him, but he vanished the same way, gone in an instant, like the ground had opened its mouth and taken him whole. By the time I got there, the sand had already begun caving inward. A few others rushed over, a lifeguard, a dad who'd been nearby, a teenage girl who dropped her phone as she bolted toward the hole. One after another, they reached into the pit, calling out, digging barehanded, trying to form a chain. And one after another, they were pulled under. It was like quicksand, but worse. Something beneath the sand seemed to grab them, drag them down. No flailing, no gasping. Just silence. We tried ropes, shovels, even tied someone to a long board, thinking we could lower them and pull them back. But the moment anything touched that part of the beach, it was like it didn't want to come back. The police showed up, then the fire department, then the search and rescue teams with their machines and scanners and ground-penetrating radar. Nothing worked. The sinkhole, they called it. A rare coastal collapse caused by unstable sediment. They said the area had hidden pockets, unseen weaknesses that gave way under pressure, but that didn't explain how it happened so fast, how it had taken the kids in seconds, how people trying to help were yanked down like prey in the jaws of something hungry. They closed the beach, taped off the entire section, cameras showed up, interviews were given, but no bodies were found, not even bones. Weeks passed. My wife barely spoke. I couldn't sleep. I kept having dreams of Lucy standing at the edge of our bed, soaked in salt water, sand in her hair, whispering, "It's still moving." I told myself it was just grief. Then the excavation team arrived. The town finally brought in heavy machinery, digging equipment, geological experts. The plan was to stabilize the surrounding land, make it safe again. But it wasn't about safety for me. I wanted closure. Something, anything that could prove my kids weren't just erased. The hole had widened. The earth around it looked chewed, not broken. No one else noticed that, or if they did, they didn't say a word. It was the third day of the excavation when they found the bones. Small, brittle, fragile. Torn clothes clung to the fragments like dried tissue paper. A pink plastic bead from Lucy's necklace. A patch from Jamie's swim trunks, tiny sun-bleached sharks. I dropped to my knees. I couldn't even cry. They sent the remains off for DNA testing, but I already knew. No one else had gone missing in that area. The coroner confirmed it later. What they didn't confirm was the condition of the bones. One of the dig site workers let it slip to a local paper, said the bones were scored, marked. deep grooves along the femur and ribs, like something had chewed on them. The official report didn't mention it, just labeled them as degraded due to soil erosion. But I saw the photos. Those weren't natural breaks. And then there was the depth. They found the bones over 70 feet down. The sand had settled, the earth had closed itself back up. But in the early hours before the dig, one of the scanners picked up movement. Movement, like something shifting below. They dismissed it as a glitch, equipment malfunction. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard that night, lying awake in the dark, my wife breathing softly beside me. It was the sound of sand, moving, shifting, scraping. Something was still digging.